We can do what's called an internal rate of return on an investment, which is where we say, hey, you know what? The cash flows on this thing are not going to be the same each year because you know what? The rents go up each year. And maybe we improve a part of the building and maybe we're getting some more rents in this section or whatever. So the cash flows are going to be different each year. So I figured out I laid out this much money at the beginning, in year 0 we'll call it. And then in year 1 we made this much, year 2 we made this much, 3, 4, 5. And in year 5 we not only made this much, but at the end of year 5 we sold the property. How much did we actually make? What kind of rate of return did we get for all 5 years the money was invested? We should be able to figure that out because in order to take and give the investor some idea when he's sitting here and saying, I can go to a REIT that's going to give me 7% rate of return. By the way, REIT is a real estate investment trust. It's kind of like a mutual fund, if you will, for real estate, to just be real clear. Capital accumulation is like one step further. We're not going to do any capital accumulation, but a capital accumulation not only calculates the rate of return for the entire period, but it also says, hey, as this money comes out, you're reinvesting this money in something else. Okay? So that's when you're really taking, because I mean, if you buy stocks, let's say the stock makes 7% a year. Did it generate any actual money to you, or do you have to sell the stock to get any of that money out? Sell a stock, right? Well, with the real estate stuff, if it generates income, you can take that money and go reinvest that money. So in order to make and compare it with the stock, you have to sit there and say, well, the stock made 7% a year, but I made 7% over here, but then I took that money out, that income out that I was paid in rent, and I invested that money and I made an additional 3% on that money. Well, that has to be added into the benefit of the investment, right? Does that make sense? I know I'm talking fast. Clear? Clear? You get what I'm saying? No?
The last part about
okay.
Adding it into the initial investment,
Let's,
benefit of the initial investment.
Okay.
If it's a separate investment.
It's a separate investment, but the fact that the investment gave me my money back to reinvest is a benefit that I don't get with a stock.
What about stocks that pay dividends?
That would be perfect. That's absolutely what we're comparing it to. Because if the stock comes up with a dividend, then that absolutely has to be calculated in the benefit of that investment. What we're sitting here and saying is, look, we have a messy investment a little bit. Real estate is a little bit of a messy investment in the sense that there's cash flows coming in, there's vacancy factors, there's repairs. I mean, last time I checked, my eBay stock doesn't have a hot water heater that breaks at 2 o'clock in the morning. You know, it doesn't. So we have to take and calculate all that in to say to our investors, hey, here's this is your return, this is better than this, and this is why. Here's the reason why we should know this stuff, guys. Not that you're going to take and deal with this with every homeowner that you work with or anything like this. If you can make this case, that problem that you have of being FaceTime with customers goes away because you walk in with so much confidence. You know that when you're talking about this investment type, you've got it on lockdown. You can speak to their checkbook with absolute certainty because where you're thinking is up here and this transaction you're working on is down here. All right? We're going back to teach kindergarten after getting our master's degree in education. Make sense? It makes you really good at what you do. Okay? And I'm telling you, I used it, I swear to God, I used this last night. I'm not making this up. I mean, I really didn't want to go to this meeting because I could barely talk after, talking all this time last night. But
And investors like numbers, right?
this wasn't even an investor. This was a homeowner. Their only home. Their parents were moving back in with them. So they wanted to sell their condo, and they wanted to get a bigger house so they could actually fit everybody. And so they wanted to rent out the house that they were in. Problem is their house they're in is like a $400,000 house. So for me, typically, that's not an investment type I would normally touch. It's too much cash out for too little rate of return. I mean, usually those types of home return 2-3%. It's usually not a good play. And I said to him, look, guys, you're going to have a problem when you go to do this because you're not going to be able to buy a house and count the income of the rental from this house because you're not going to have the rental income until after you move out. And even if you did, banks usually want a year of income from the property before they're willing to count it as income on your statement. I said the much better play, in my estimation, would be sell that home, take the benefit of how much you paid down the mortgage. They paid down the mortgage for 13 years. Put some of that money toward a down payment on your new house. Buy 1 or 2 other less expensive properties that are going to have a higher rate of return. Now, at the same time, I was fine telling them, hey, don't buy the 5-bedroom house, rent for a year, and keep the house if you really want to make that house a rental. That's another way to take and do it. I gave them all their options. But at the end of the day, I gave them an option that was going to give them a much better rate of return on their money, and long term, it was going to set them up to have, by the time they retire, 15 or 20 homes, so they could take and sell a home a year if they want to, or just live off the income to supplement their Social Security. They're going to have options, as opposed to folks that are just working their butts off to survive.
So you educate them.
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, I'm going to wind up doing 5 transactions with them instead of 3.
Yes.
And that was with the calculator and 5 minutes.
Are people
To me talk? I don't know. There's 13 people in the room that were here yesterday and they came back today, so I don't know. It seems like people listen to me talk. I don't know. No, of course people are willing to listen. If you start talking to people, I mean, I have a small group that meets in my home. It's just a bunch of people from church. They come to my house and they meet. I casually mentioned that I wrote a book about finance. They were like, oh my God, please, please tell us. People are so desperate to figure out how to get out of the rat race. How do I get ahead? I'm working so hard. How do I get ahead? Buying a home actually helps people get closer to getting ahead. We're going to look at the difference in the numbers. It's going to be scary in a little bit.